Good morning, viewers. Welcome to this edition of Focus on Parliament. I am your usual host, Agather, and we, as usual, are looking at the events that have unfolded in Parliament this week. And there are quite a number, but we will single out a few and look at what those mean and what is going on. But also there is the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill that was passed last week that I don't think we have exhausted its implications, the problems surrounding it, and what we can do as Ugandans to rectify those, to secure our freedoms and rights of expression and press. One of the things that have happened during this week in Parliament were the passing of the Museums Bill that was passed by Parliament. We had Parliament congratulate the newest president in the region, William Ruto in Kenya, and lauding the Kenyans for a seamless transfer of power. Then we also have a statement by the leader of opposition about the inability of government to fulfill its statutory obligations, and a report that was rejected by Parliament from one of the committees of Parliament on infrastructure for being shallow. We will see what we can discuss among those, what time allows to discuss, but also mainly we will look at again the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill. To discuss with me that, I have a panel of gentlemen. I will begin with my immediate neighbor, Michael Aboneka. Michael Aboneka is a lawyer, public interest litigation enthusiast. Very happy to have you here, Michael.
Thank you, Agatha. Good morning. Thank you for having me back to this show, the only show of the weekend.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you for coming, Michael. Yeah. We also have Jeff. Jeff Wadulo is the Parliamentary Liaison at CSBAG. CSBAG is the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. And Jeff is quite a regular on this show, and we appreciate that you always find time to join us and help us with these things. You cover Parliament, you cover money, you know about budgets. So we benefit from your knowledge and experience in these things a lot. You're welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks, Agatha. Good morning, viewers. Maybe what I need to add is that I also have another docket, Agatha, you may not have known.
Okay.
I'm also the Executive Director of Jenga Africa.
Oh?
Jenga Africa, it's a governance and accountability organization.
Build Africa. So Jenga
in Swahili, so Kujenga Africa, but through the governance and accountability. And especially when it comes now to issues of governance, that's the docket where I speak more rather than as from CSBAG. But when it comes to issues of Parliament and so on.
Yes, it's CSBAG.
That's right.
Yeah. So here on this show, because we really focus on Parliament.
On Parliament, but when that perspective comes, then I'll be changing hats, you know, you get.
That's good. Yes, right. I do. So, gentlemen, I want us to start by looking at the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill again. I had thought we should look at it because mainly we were supposed to have Honorable Namuga Goreti, who authored a minority report and was the lone signatory of that report that was saying all the things the problems we have with the bill. It being repressive, draconian, and having no place in the 21st century and a democracy that we claim to be, but also it being a duplication of the things they are providing for are already catered for. So we're supposed to have her here to take us through what happened, but she has not managed to make it. But I have Michael Aboneka, the lawyer, that would tell us what is at stake here and what should Ugandans do to push back at this if it is as bad as we think it is, because of the outcry out there that we have a Parliament that is more and more enacting laws that are not for the citizens, but to protect maybe and entrench the people in power and shield them from criticism and scrutiny. What are your views on that bill, Michael?
Thank you very much, Agatha. And to say from the very start that I had the opportunity to be invited by the committee as Michael Aboneka and Thomas and Mike advocates to present our views on the bill. So I went to the committee. I made our submissions, and we didn't even have a question. And the House seemed to be, of course, in agreement with what we were saying. But to me, the biggest question was, what mischief is this bill trying to cure? Yeah. And I didn't find anything in the affirmative. There was no mischief that the bill was intending to cure. Be it talking about children, we have the Children Act. We even have an amendment of 2019, which actually protects the child. And anything that is done within the interest of the child is already protected by the Constitution and the Children Act. So what this bill does is that I think it looked like it was someone's project. Because if you look at some of the provisions, they even had the issue to do with public office. If you contravene anything within this bill, then you can't stand for office for the next 10 years.
If you're already in office, you
dismiss. So now the question is this office, does it mean you're an MP? And then court has already decided on how does an MP leave the House? The such quo matter if we have voted for you. So, and yet, under the public standing orders, under the Leadership Code Act,
right,
the schedule stipulates what leaders, actually MPs are included there, that can actually be summoned under the Leadership Code Act, and I think it gives it 7 years.
Yeah.
So you can go for 7 years without standing. The Act is saying 10 years, but I'm happy that was deleted. The committee, and I think maybe it's because we made a presentation and said, by the way, tomorrow it could be you.
You would be the victims of
you would be the victims. So maybe probably that's why they rejected it. But the other one, so for the one on special information about the children, we argued and said many cases of children who are being beaten, tortured, they have been saved by someone secretly taking a video and sharing it.
Yeah.
Citizen journalism, vigilance. And now you're creating a law to stop people from sharing that useful information that is actually going to save the children. Now, the argument that we made was that there is no exception. Because they are saying, first go and seek permission of the one beating or the parent of the child before you even take, before you take and share. Now, the person is beating a child. And you're saying, first go and get their permission. If you don't get their permission, you go in for 10 years. Or you pay, about 4.8 million Uganda shillings. Now, what level of incompetence is that? So what Parliament did is to include an exception to say, you can share unless it is for the you can share if it is for the best interest,
public interest,
best interest of the child. I think that's what now clause C that has been infected. I'm like, okay, fair enough. But then you got things like malicious information and what have you, unsolicited information. What I'm hurting in there is that they said unsolicited information does not include commercial information. And yet, every now and then it is commercial things. We are selling bras, we are selling coffins, we receive a lot of unsolicited information.
I think someone has gone to court over it, even the MTN messages.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it Katundu?
Yeah, because then UCC is supposed to have regulations on that. And I told the committee that UCC already has regulations. And even as an individual, there is a complaint mechanism at UCC, save for the tribunal, which we are still looking for. That because the messages unsolicited that we receive are mainly for unknown people we don't know. Then the question is, where did they get our numbers from? We have a whole data and privacy and protection law. So if you're sending me a message about your SPAC, where did you get my number? And I think for me, I told them that we don't need the law. UCC is already regulating that, but under the data and protection and privacy, under the Constitution, a right to privacy, and Article 27 is a right. And now you can enforce it under the Human Rights Enforcement Act. I just go and say, where did this person get my number? Why are they texting me? These people who you send a CV to an organization, they refuse to give you a job, and you find your CV at a Rolex shop stand. The law is already there. You can go and take on that person. So it wasn't really necessary. Now, talking about the other salient one was about the issue to do with the hate speech. Hate speech. So and what I found was that, first of all, is that there is nothing new about hate speech, because it is about an individual.
Right.
There is a law of defamation. And what they are defining, they are saying if a person is ridiculed, demeaned, or whatever way, if you feel demeaned, ridiculed, you've been belittled by my statement, file a civil suit.
Good.
Why are we wasting, pumping a lot of work to police if they cannot conclude a simple theft matter and gather evidence? People, they don't have resources. Probably they have now the forensic department of police. I'm happy that now it is kicking on. But the thing is, we are overloading. Society, we can't. Recently, we've been struggling with nyege. You can't legislate morality every now and then. Society should be left for people to have an avenue of, by the way, you can be taken to court and pay 500 million for saying something that demeans my character. What is defamation is that if in the right thinking members of society you've been ridiculed, then it is defamation, which is already catered for under the civil law. So I didn't find that very important, but I think this law is the project of probably someone. It came out as so vindictive. It came out as if it is really personal. Today I was discussing with a professor and I was asking him, where's the Plant Varieties Act, the regulations? Where are we at? We need serious laws on various things. The marriage and whatever has been shelved. What happens? How come we get on board on some things that do not matter? So to me the question is, that bill did not answer the issue of the mischief. It's a duplication. And if you read the report of Parliament, it has two parts. The first part where they are talking about the justifications and what have you, and then the next part where now the amendment is happening. And if you read through, they are saying, yes, we have this law, but we think this is okay.
What happened during the debate was the Attorney General got up to speak about it, and Honorable Namuga said, but even the Attorney General, when he appeared before the committee, said it was not necessary, it was a duplication. And I think the Attorney General said, no, that's not what he meant. He thought this is provides either clarification or supplementary or something like that. So talking about police, I was shocked that even police rejected it. Which is the question I want to ask you, Jeff. So consultations at committee level, what are they supposed to serve? If you can consult all the 18 entities that were consulted, and they say, no, we don't need this bill. At best, it is not necessary. At worst, it is so repressive. What is the need for consultation?
Why did they consult us? Yeah.
I think it's going through the motions. Number one, I think Parliament is constrained. This particular Parliament of ours is constrained by the lack of the ability to be critical on some of the laws that they pass. In the recent past, I think this Parliament has passed, in their first session, of about 50 bills. Never mind that a number of them keep being returned by the president.
But they are not returned because of quality.
For different reasons. But a number of them are redone. Actually, others more or less done all over. So it tells you two things, that this Parliament can pass anything, regardless. It reminds me, there's a time when we had the advocacy around the mobile money tax. A number of MPs agreed with us on the issue. And they said, on this one, they even signed our commitment books. On this one, I'm with you. On the day of debate, fellows start calling me back. I don't know whether they started getting calls from other. Says, you know what, Jeff, I'm with you on this one, but my party. I said, now your conscience tells you something else.
Your party tells
you're doing something else, even when it's the wrong thing. So when you tell me about the role of stakeholders in giving them the right thing, we told them the right thing, by the way, in that particular bill on mobile money tax. We gave them even alternatives. We said, you know what, you're looking for money here, you're going to get less money at a higher cost and at the cost of losing trust by the citizens. Here, on this one where you would focus more on the mobile money companies, you are likely to get more money in excise duty and actually seamlessly without even effect. But they chose the other one. Now, they amended the law. I mean, they passed the law without actually knowing what they had passed. The president brings it back. The same committee calls us back again.
After ignoring.
Now come and tell us what you wanted to tell us that we did not do.
Yeah.
So in that spirit, there are many laws that will be passed in that spirit, but without being keen on the impact of those particular laws. You also remember during the Rebecca Kadaga tenure when Olanya was the was the deputy speaker. I think that was the first. Was that 2010?
2011.
When was the POMA pass?
POMA is 2013.
2013. In a record 30 minutes. They even blocked everyone who wanted to go and get into the gallery and witness. They blocked us from entering Parliament. In a record 30 minutes, that law had been passed. So when the executive wants something...
Many provisions of that law have since been declared unconstitutional.
Exactly. So it speaks to the... You know, if the spirit behind the passage of a particular law, it will be passed, but that law is dead on arrival. Now, specifically now concerning Honorable Nsereko's private members bill, by the way, I would have loved that a cabinet minister should have been the one to sponsor the amendment. So I zero it down to, I think, something personal. Honorable Nsereko had critics who were really bringing him down on social media. And he was like, let me show you, I have power. I can do these things. I'm a legislator. I can come up with a private members bill and I will get you in trouble. And that's what he did. But actually what he did, he's already done elsewhere. So if you look at the minority report, by the way, very thorough. That report, minority report, is very thorough.
The progressive parliament would have adopted
the minority report instead of the majority report. So it again speaks to the majority will just tag along. It doesn't matter what the content of the bill is. Because if you are bringing amendments that have already been taken care of by a host of about 10 other, acts, then what are you actually doing? And then you smuggle in something at plenary level, which was not even part of the committee. And yes, but then even with this very good minority report, you still pass the law as it is with the majority observations. So we have a problem of a parliament that will not legislate on the basis of what is true, what is right, but perhaps what the spirit directs at a given time. And so we have so many of those laws on our books. But some of them, I mean, a good law can always be implemented. A bad law is dead on arrival. And that's what will happen to this one. Okay. I'm keen to hear what the president...
And actually, we can tell the president here, please don't.
Please don't. I'm keen to hear. But
I wanted to first ask about... Michael calls it someone's project. Right. And you think that someone is Nsereko. Well, if Nsereko...
Or his representative.
Or he's representing someone.
Or his sponsors.
I know.
If Nsereko is... it's his project, he was really misadvised. Because if you want Nsereko, who comes from Kampala Central, at least Honorable Dan Chimosho, who later moved it for second reading, can get away with it. People in Kazo might not But your Kampala constituents, I don't think they can forgive you.
They are surviving on
something
on
like
media.
that.
That's where most of his opponents are.
But I wanted to share, for me, the view that I got from watching that that debate. Honorable Sereko, first of all, it seems has disowned it. He didn't move it for the second reading. But also yesterday when I was calling him to come to this show, he said, no, I don't want anything to do with that discussion about his own bill. So the debate starts and the speaker is asking for seconders. And if you get up, you could tell maybe they have been mobilized. So, hey, and she says, all of you should support this bill. Yeah, because you will be victims. It went, or it goes on, and then there's where Namuga gets up and says, no, I disagree. The punishment is very stringent. It's really unnecessary. And the speaker said, if it was me, it would be worse. I would have given even a tougher one. And they reach a moment where someone is saying, but brings in an issue of court, and she says, let them go to court. Even the judges are abused. We will see if they side with them. Now, so you, Mike, as a lawyer, a presiding officer, their role in that debate, where are they supposed to stop? And is that something also that you can challenge and say, but this referee was clearly...
Yeah, I think that is very interesting, because you see, the process is as important and as good as the outcome. Because last time we talked about the ROCO and how somehow it passed.
It was passed by the...
Yeah, you move the motion yourself, and then you don't give opportunity for members to raise even objections, and then you just say the ayes have it. So the same here, you're supposed to be impartial. The same discussion we had for when Honorable Zake was being
sanctioned.
Yes, and then the victim, the complainant is on, starring the debate of the House.
Is the one who sends it to the committee.
You send it to the committee for investigation. You want to chair. It's like you're saying, kama ambaya, whatever happens, we must agree to remove this guy. So I think that it's bad. It's bad for democracy. You can't even pretend. It's bad, because you see the rules of procedure, by the way, are the effect that your role is like the Luganda word, kukubiriza luchiko, ensure that people are debating fairly, because then you are going to silence the views of others. By the way, that parliament is not for 529 people. It is for the 45 million Ugandans. Right. That's the thing they forget. So as the speaker, I am a bit disappointed that if that's how things are going to be, then we are going to have problems, because that has an effect. If, for example, there's a constitutional petition and say there was no balanced debate, there was bias ab initio from the start, it seemed like this bill, whether they liked it or not, was supposed to. Because what do you do as a speaker? And I think this is the point where we've been even saying that we need to revise these things. Speakers shouldn't even belong to a political party. We had these...
Shouldn't even represent the constitution.
Yes. We had these issues where you sit in SEC today, SEC takes the decision, but then you come tomorrow to the House that you're now chairing the session. Now, at what point are you going to deviate from SEC's decision? Because you have to make sure that, and I think it was even wrong for let me give the example, the deputy speaker to say, members, they have received information from government that we must really pass this thing.
No, he even talked about the bankers. The bankers are saying it must, and you wonder.
Yeah, so when did they say? Did they call him personally? Did they write a petition? There's a way to influence Parliament. You write a petition. You put in your comments, like I did for the Computer Misuse Act. So you don't take us for granted. Right. The 18 institutions, the 18 individuals and organizations that submitted, that were consulted, don't take them for granted. So that one alone, by the way, can be imputed in terms of the manner of debate, because you see it wasn't free and fair. It wasn't, people weren't allowed to be given a chance. They were just cajoled. And so we could actually say that probably there was no debate. on that, on that bill. And some of us are already investigating other circumstances to say, you know what, fine, we can deal with the substance of the bill. And like I said before, let us be fair. At least let the process be good.
Yeah.
So that we always go to court and we are dealing with just the substance of the thing.
Yeah.
But how many bills are going to be thrown out? You watch, on just quorum, on just the way, the process. And that actually can't be when Uganda is going to make 60 years of independence and our parliament is deteriorating every day. You can't follow your own rules of procedure, then what kind of parliament are you? So I think that many people say we talk a lot of negativity, but if that's what it is, yeah, the good things we shall say thank you very much, but we have to make sure that you do the good things. Because you paid money, you are there, you're representing us.
That's what you are supposed to
We
do.
can't all be in parliament. So if every lawyer was doing a bad job, then you say, but even you make a mistake, then the world won't be. If the people build bridges, we're also saying, but mistakes are allowed. You know the cracks that are always coming out. I'm
even wondering why Dana Twijukire is the one who finally did it okay, he could have been absent, but could have also been, I think, strategic. I think at a certain point, a lot of acrimony had been created in the public. Honorable Nsereko associating himself with a bill like this. So they had already warned him that, you know what, you go on with this, you will go down with it. Is it possible that he is now trying to run away from responsibility?
What I know is that last week he was not in the country.
Right.
But they had decided to wait for him and discuss it this week.
Right.
But all of a sudden it was debated and passed. I might not know the circumstances, but Honorable Dan Chimasho is also a close friend of the speakers. So, so many things make sense. So I don't know if it was because you are my friend. If Nsereko indeed delegated and said, "Move it for me," he was not willing to divulge that. But whatever the case, so I think now we have a problem with both the process and the bill itself, because of how it contravenes the Constitution.
There are usually 3 Ps: the people, the process, and the product. If there's a problem with, especially the people P, the other 2 are likely to have problems. So the process and the product.
Which brings me to the question I wanted to ask you.
Right.
You were talking about the quality of bills, and now Michael also is bringing in the issue of flouting the procedure.
Right.
Is this a problem of a parliament that is not grounded that we are dealing with, or are we dealing with the impunity that just gets worse each day? Because the attrition rate maybe was higher this time, but you still have many seasoned legislators that are still in that house. What could be the problem?
I think I'm happy with the fact that the change towards having many private members sponsoring bills is a shift from the 10th Parliament, where most of the bills were being sponsored by the guys who have the cardinal responsibility. However, I think that there is still a need to balance between the number of bills you pass, and not pride yourself in the number of bills you've churned out, but the quality of those bills. To the extent that if it misses maybe the president's eye, because he also has a very good team of people, especially where he has interest, they will bring back. So we have also seen an increase, I think, in this parliament where the biggest number of bills have been returned. So it tells you, I think not enough research is being done, not enough consultation is being done.
And why is that?
I think there are 2 things: where there is interest, they would rush it regardless, but also where there's lack of information. I don't know what is driving the churning out of so many bills, some of which you really see are not necessary. So we have to interrogate the nexus between the number of bills, their quality, and their rate of return, and the impact on society. I think it's timely.
But also, Agatha, to add, I think this is a time when we need to do like, I think they're coming to almost 2 years, 2.5. Like we need to do like a midterm review of the performance of Parliament, not just MPs. How many times have they said ABC? That can be part of it, but in terms of the four roles of appropriation, legislation, oversight, and representation.
Right.
Because you see, I have never seen a minister in a committee meeting, but he is a member of Parliament. So I, as a voter, I'm not represented, you know, and I've been talking about this thing for a long time. How can a minister double as an MP? Because you remember the Right Honourable Speaker has been up in arms. People are not showing up. If you have 61 ministers who are also doubling as MPs and they are always not in Parliament, then the people are actually not being represented. And I have a right to go to court and say, my right to being represented has not been respected. Because you see, we have to look at all in that spectrum, and some of us are in those conversations of, I think it's time to test the waters and say, you know, you can't be both. You get a vehicle of 200 million as an MP, but then you have a V8, a new one, as a minister. So when you're driving to the constituency, which car do you drive? Or do you drive both?
You drive the ministry car, which is fueled for you, yet you have a car for Parliament
MP.
And fuel and the
of course, they will
constituency fund.
They also have a guard, sharpshooters that are following you.
Are following you. So at what point do we say, today, and by the way, we'll ask for accountability of the mileage and the fuel. When you went to your constituency, which one did you use? You sign a voucher from the ministry or the card, and then at the same time you're asking for your money for mileage allowance. And that is complex. So I think that there are many, many issues. Because if you are an MP, you have your expertise, you're a medical doctor, we need to benefit from that. But you see, they will say, now I'm executive, okay? So then, how do you, as an executive, play an oversight function over yourself? So the fusion
of the roles,
the fusion of the legislature and executive is actually causing a lot of trouble. The same things, you can't be in SEC, ruling government. We need to change all these things.
And I think the former speaker, Rebecca Gidaguyi, speak and at the same time NRM vice chair for Eastern Uganda.
Exactly. So at what point do you say, I will not take the position of SEC? So I think that this is the time, Maire, to correct, because we need a house that is called Parliament. And I remember one of us, we had this proposal and saying, no, let us redo this whole thing. Have our 80 people in that house, give them their terms of reference, let everyone, because you see, representation is not just about voting. If, for example, we have this bill, we will go and move across the country and consult people. That is, people that have been consulted. And then we come and debate it. So, but people are rushing into, let's have a parliamentary system where the president is voted by the parliament. Everyone is looking for their small thing. But I think for me, it's the right time to say, guys, let's stop a minute. What are the challenges we have? There's issues of research. People are saying, let us increase to master's degree, or let us have a degree for qualification of a member of parliament. But I think for me, that is all just, other small issues. We need to deal with the issue of, can Parliament now today, can we say it has done well in oversight? Can we say it has done well in appropriation? Can we say it has done well in representation? And all these other things. Because then, if that has been done, you can't just pass things without quorum. You can't do things the way you want.
I'm actually yet to look, because I have some work I'm doing with Gerard of AFLI on the scorecard.
Yeah.
I used to do the appropriation component, but also be asked to look at the entire performance of the different sessions of first the 10th and now we're looking at the 11th. Our findings from the 10th, actually we found the 10th Parliament was very well schooled. minimum, most of them had a bachelor's, only a few certificates and none of A
I
level.
think this one is more.
Now, this one is even more
It's
so.
more, yeah, it has more
So,
professionals.
I think, and we found also out that most of them are teachers in the 10th Parliament. We're yet to look. We are still building the database for the 11th. Then the second one was social workers. And then the third was what? But there were teachers. Actually, we're also developing now policy interrogation around. So why are teachers running to Parliament, and what is it in that? Yeah, but the quality of our Parliament, I think, is not just on the basic 4 cardinal roles. I think it's majorly on the interaction between the executive, the power that the executive has over the institution, and especially the ruling party and its caucus, which, by the way, I think the caucus in the 11th Parliament is doing better than the caucus of the 10th Parliament in terms of agreeing with everything that the executive or the president brings. I think they've stood up to the president twice on the coffee deal, on the issue of bail, and a number of issues. And if you also see the investigation, even when it is COSASA led by the opposition, but there are majority MPs of the NRM on that, and you would see them asking very hard questions. So in that respect, there is some improvement. But we've not yet gotten there, because there are some things which you see. If you see a speaker coming up and saying, I'm being threatened, my life is in danger, what does that tell you? Is she saying no to some of the things that the executive would have liked to just pass, hush? Or are we seeing a power play between the different forces within Parliament, the institution of speaker, as well as their relationship with the executive? Remember that the president previously has always wanted a submissive Parliament so that he actually does his thing the way he wants it. And he has, on occasion, actually superintended the elections of speaker so that he actually gets his own people.
Even now, he's done.
Even now, yes, but I think he may not have gotten exactly what he wanted, perhaps.
This is the time he has gotten what he wants. He wanted the most.
Well, I don't. Well, if that was what he wanted, but what he's getting is perhaps not, because the moment the caucus stands up to you, that's a very big test of how you are able to now throw around your power to get what you want. We've seen a lot of committee reports being very critical of government proposals. I've seen the one on trade and tourism. I've seen the one on physical infrastructure. I've seen the one, even somehow now, the National Economy Committee, the one which normally passes our debt. You see much more critical.
It still passes.
It still passes.
The reports are critical, but it passes the law.
Yes, but now we are getting...
At least the committees are...
They are a little more critical and rather biting and so on. So are we seeing a transition? A transition of a little more powerful but disorganized Parliament, which are unable to speak one thing on an issue. Forget about the nyege thing, which perhaps the speaker accidentally said in her communication from the chair, and then it was taken as law, you know.
Accidentally, she said it many times for it to be
you know, sometimes you can accidentally say something and you have no exit route. Then you stick with it for some time and then find the appropriate time to leave it. But when you realize that, by the way, I actually don't really have power to stop this, but I'm able to act as an independent institution regardless. We are seeing those mix-ups, a transition towards a more powerful Parliament, but a little more disorganized without a common purpose. Yeah, that's what I can see.
Okay, so of course I disagree with many of the things Jeff has said about President Museveni not getting what he wants, because he's the one who chose these people. In fact, I think our very first edition or second here was about the appointment of a speaker.
Right.
And it had been informed by the deputy speaker, then now the speaker, saying at the vigil of Oranyan, saying, Mr. President, thank you for making Jacob speaker. Yeah? That was admission that this speaker is not elected. And we knew that already. It's not that we didn't know, but what I am saying is, for them to come out and admit these things, it becomes, okay.
The truth never hides.
Yeah, so he chooses Jacob Olanya over Kadaga first. And of course, the one he chooses carries the day.
Right.
Because he admitted making phone calls during their election.
And the Tayebwas of this world and so on.
So he chooses the deputy speaker. And I know what happened in that SEC, because there were people in SEC that opposed the appointment, the selection of the Honorable Among to replace Olanya. And he said, no, she has managed for me the opposition. That is what the president said. Now he chooses her and chooses Tayeb as the deputy. What are you saying, that he didn't get what he wanted, yet he got the people he chose?
Well,
if when he chose Olanya, people, the MPs had insisted and voted, the Honorable Kadaga would have said he didn't get what he wanted.
No, but you could see that by the time Kadaga gets 180 votes, amidst all the state pressure and everything else, it tells you that a number of the MPs in the 11th Parliament didn't get, their choice was not the other one.
For the MPs, I agree. For the president, no, I don't.
But also the fact that now the person who ends up being speaker was supposed to be the deputy speaker in the Olanya arrangement before his demise. So he's now dealing with a new mix of power. He's very unpredictable. He doesn't know where it might go. And he has to be a little bit more careful.
Okay, that's, I think, Michael, my last question on the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill was, what are options, what's the way forward in the event that the president does not return it and signs it into law?
One, we asked the president not to assent to it. The president, it has we call it a return birthday gift. You know, this week I'm told it was his birthday. Was it yesterday? Was it on Thursday?
Yesterday, I think.
Yeah, on Thursday. So
that's which date?
Yeah, so it's a September baby, we are told.
September 15th. Yesterday was 15th.
Thursday. Yeah. So I think on Thursday it was his birthday. So there is what we call a return sosh, a return prom for those who went to those schools. So we hope that as a return gift for his birthday, he shouldn't assent to this bill. I know that Parliament has power, you know, to pass the bill even when the president doesn't. But there are few instances where that has happened. But you see, at the end of the day, it is the executive.
I've never seen it happen.
Yeah, it is the executive that has the mandate to implement it, because then it becomes easy. So that's option one, a birthday return. I mean, if the president really loves the voters. Number two is that
a big if.
Yeah. Let him give us a gift. Then we will know he loves us. Number two is that...
let him start loving us now.
Let him start with the...
President, we're asking you to love us.
Let him start by restituting Facebook.
And not sign the bill. But number two, even when it is signed, for us we are ready, as usual, to go and contest it, you know, in the Constitutional Court. You know, and we are doing groundwork. And the thing is that we have to reach a point, you have to be citizens, not who watch things happen, not on whom things happen, but who make things happen.
Right.
Because then what else can we do? Like they say, you want Ugandans to do what? For us, we shall go to court. I mean, what else can we do? But we hope that the president doesn't. And we
hope that the courts also will be on our side.
Yeah, and we hope that, because by the way, the Constitution is that judicial power is derived from the people, the power of the people, from the people. They are, you know, through their values and what have you. And we keep reminding Constitutional Court over that. And on Monday we are there again. So I think that those are our options, because a bad law, the only way The only person who can say it is not it's a good law or a bad law, it is again the court to play that. Again, the checks and balances of both the executive and the legislature. But also lastly is that let us not be quick at counting how many bills we've passed. As Parliament, we've done very well. We have passed 100 bills. But what is the substance in the bills that you've passed? Yeah.
But also remember, I like your reference to the cardinal role of the judiciary.
Yeah.
But remember, when that fails, we revert to the court of public opinion, but also court of public action. The emergence of...
that was the question I was going to give you, that Michael is speaking as a lawyer. So for us who know that things can fail everywhere,
what can we do?
Then people take on responsibility to sort. Remember the crisis that was in Sudan? And when the citizens had fought their battle, the other forces of power had to start now joining citizens. I saw the judiciary was the last. They marched and joined the citizens, having realized that, without the approval of citizens, their role as the judiciary is of no particular weight or value. Because now the power will have shifted. And they have now to rebirth themselves with this new dispensation. Yeah, so I agree.
Okay, on that note, let's take a short commercial break. When we return, we look at Parliament congratulating His Excellency William Ruto in Kenya, and also the Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi talking about a transition law, a presidential transition law, and if that can happen in this country. Yes, we'll be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
From that short break, and we are still on the show Focus on Parliament. I am still with Michael Aboneka, a lawyer, and Jeff Wadulo. Jeff is a Parliamentary Liaison with CSBAG, the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. And we are discussing we are discussing a lot of things that have happened in Parliament this week. One of them was about the President of Kenya. Kenya, on the 13th of September, sworn in their 5th President, Dr. William Ruto, and the Deputy Speaker, Thomas Taiba, was congratulating the Kenyans and lauding them for their democracy and urging the rest of East Africa to draw lessons from that. The Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi from Butambala rose up and asked Parliament to reconsider a motion that was once tabled in the 9th Parliament by the Buyikwe MP, Honorable Lulu Mebaiga, that was seeking leave of Parliament to introduce a bill on presidential transition. We have waited for this transition for 40 years, or almost 40 years now. But my question to the panelists today is, what's the role of Parliament? The Parliament that is now allowing the Kenyans for a seamless transfer of power. What role has it played in our failure to have one, and also the fears that maybe we might never even have one? I'll start with you, Mike.
Thank you. Of course, I would still love to congratulate the Kenyans And of course, the president, Dr. William Ruto, I'm told is going to be here to open the UMA show, whatever. I hope that is true. But
so that you can shake hands.
We shake hands and congratulate him. Court has confirmed he's the president. So what do you do? Nature has a way. There are things which you have to accept and move on. So he's the president of Kenya. We congratulate him and the entire UDM, yes. So, and the function, I was able to follow, by the way. I was supposed to be there. But there are lessons that we learn. And I'm sure every leader, every politician from across the world, I saw many delegates, including the richest man in Africa. But the post I read was from a Ugandan, and is my friend, who said, what Kenya has just done now. Actually, I posted a picture of His Excellency Uhuru handing over to Dr. William. And he said this picture is actually over $12 billion foreign, direct foreign investment worth. That this transition only, the amount of money it's going to bring into the economy, because now people are saying, wow, there's some semblance of democracy here. There's some semblance of transition of power. And some semblance, there is now peace. We can go back to work. So that alone is also very huge. So each time we talk about transition, security, we should look at it at a bigger lens that, economy. It's about economy. So when Parliament here congratulates, I hope that they are doing it of course, in a good spirit, but also with some bit of introspection. So Kenya has, a transition plan. There's a committee which has to guide and sit and tell the outgoing president. I think the President Uhuru Kenyatta held several state house farewells. I was like, wow. Thanking everyone, the gardener and what have you. So in my life, I've never seen another president. So I am hoping that I can see another president, not government, but president. And that I think it will happen. But now the problem is the process, the transition. And as Uganda, we can't wait to say, when we are ready for transition, let us now do a law, or let us find a way. Because we can learn from Kenya, we can learn from Zambia. Zambia, it changed from even incumbent to the opposition. So and then other people like, but you opposition, government, how can you lose to the opposition when you own the machinery? But that's what democracy is. That the incumbent can pass on the instruments of power to his colleague who is, because they are systems. Now, in this country, we don't know how we can handle transition. I even have, I keep saying that, by the way, when the incumbent is running for presidency, ideally should leave office for 6 months and let the Chief Justice take charge. Because you can't be president. So when it's clock 6 p.m., you're like, I'm now addressing you as the president of Uganda, not as the candidate. It's an unfair advantage. It can't always work. So then you're dealing with meeting people. So when you're meeting investors or you're meeting delegations during that time, but they're meeting a presidential candidate. So don't you think they'll be biased towards doing everything they can to support you? So we need such processes. And I've been arguing, is the president a civil servant or not? And if you draw money from a consolidated fund, then you are a civil servant. So if he's a civil servant, can he also retire 6 months to elections? Those are the questions we've been asking. Then people said, no, he's a political head. But if you draw money from the consolidated fund, so we need to have a process, 6 months, in terms of, because that is also transition, by the way, so that we can manage it. The reason as to why it is very difficult for people to say the incumbent, you can't beat them, because at that time they are still president. Like, I'm not used. How are they going to announce and say you are no longer president? Then you get out. So the transition has to have things like, term limits. I think we're having a discussion with Jeff earlier that we may not mind age limit, but we know for sure, like Uhuru, after 10 years, he had to pack. The Kenyan constitution helped them the transition. So we need to have a whole law on what guys transition, what happens there. There is a team actually that is supposed to oversee the transition. That the new president is being, given the orientation, the support, the state, machinery. I like the video of the William Ruto came with his Lexus, and then he had to leave with the state, the presidential car,
right?
With the coat of arms and what have you. That kind of transition where things are changing, and now there are packages for, Uhuru Kenyatta. He will be there as a former president. So I think it is important, and we don't have to wait when we think, transition is due, because then we'll have a crisis.
Right.
Because now the question is, how do we deal with transition in Uganda?
Yeah.
Apart from saying we vote every 5 months, every 5 years, and then that is it. But we need to have a transition. Because if tomorrow President Museveni says, I am not coming back on the ballot paper, that's not when we should be thinking about transition. There are other natural occurrences which may occur, like what happened in Tanzania. So people only talk about the constitutional part where you see and you see the constitutional part is only when a president dies. They give circumstance here. When a president dies, if it's less than 6 months to whatever, we can only have a vice president take over as president if we have only less than 6 months to elections. Yeah. So all those are issues to think about, and I think it is good for any person, for any leader. You have to leave legacy. For any country to succeed, there are two things that must happen: transition plan, and it is called scenario building and succession planning. Yeah. So success, and people are so much about the who's going to replace President Museveni, who's going to replace Michael, who's going to replace, but the question is there a process that will facilitate this transition? Even if it is from Michael to Michael too, but is there a process? Because you see that process now will guard against the scavengers who will want to also partake of the things around the transition. So I think that Honorable Muwanga Kivumbi made a very great statement, and I think we should encourage that. Of all the many bills they are passing, if people are there debating their pension after life, can't we also debate transition? How shall we handle? Shall we have a panel of eminent persons? Who shall we have to make sure that the outgoing president is guarded, is provided with the necessary, equipment and what have you, and the incoming one feels like, I'm not fearing for my life, but that there is a necessary state, because you see, the state should be different from a government. But right now we have a problem where they are fused. So when the current government is out of power, will the state collapse? The state must remain functioning. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Jeff, when you see the current Deputy Speaker of Parliament talking about congratulating Kenya on carrying out their democratic duties and ensuring a peaceful and seamless transfer of power, and you remember a parliament that scrapped term limits in 2005, and a parliament that passed age limit amendment in 2017 in the ways that they did. What do you think about that? Is that hypocrisy? Is that what do you think?
Interesting. You see, when you hold power, there are two things. You have the ability to say what you mean, but you can also mean what you say. I don't know how to take Right Honorable Deputy Speaker's comment. You see, when you're given an opportunity to chair the House, you have this obligation to communicate from the chair. And what you say usually kind of shapes the tone of that session and perhaps the institution that you lead. Now, how you are motivated to say whatever you say should be informed by your conscience, and not just say things perhaps which you do not believe in, or if you do believe in, perhaps maybe you are the only person against the institution that has done all these things that you have talked about in the past for the last 3 parliaments. In it reminds me, Agatha, when we were participating in assessing the performance of the 10th Parliament, at that time when the late Olanya was Deputy Speaker, I happened to be, they had invited civil society, actors and so on, to give feedback on how the 10th Parliament had performed. And in that space, actually, Norbert Ma was in, I remember Akena was in, and many others. I think the Law Society was represented, the Human Rights Commission was represented. And when my turn came to speak, I remember that time I'd just participated as I'd been elected as the Speaker of the Public Parliament, a facility which the 10th Parliament had put in place to allow members of the public to have a simulation of how parliaments run. So you're elected as Speaker, you run, and you hold that position for a whole year. So I stood up and the Deputy Speaker was the guest of honor. I stood up and said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have one problem in Uganda called President Museveni. Until we have sorted that problem, and he has to be part of the solution, nothing in Uganda will ever move. Now, when we spoke, actually Mao spoke and so on, and he actually, for him, he said, we need to mind the gap. That transition of from one, especially if you're jumping off a train or boarding a train, you always need to mind the gap, actually reflecting the need for being careful when you're transiting power. That same day, by the way, I gave Mao a lift back to his home, and we talked about a number of things, and I referred to that, and I said, but remember what I said? And he said, yes, you said that. But then I said, what happened? Because Olanya rubbished all our things we said. I told him, you see, without sorting that problem, because I said, you see, revolutions are by their own nature dictatorships. When you acquire power through the force of arms, you have to keep that power through the force of arms. Otherwise, the people you subdued will always want that power back. But after some time, is it possible to outgrow the revolution by getting back power to the true cause? So what informs the longevity of President Museveni's regime is not that, by the way, it's not so much about the love for power. It is about being stuck with power.
We don't know that. Are you sure?
From my own assessment, you see, being stuck with power has a lot of things that inform it. You have, in a way of keeping power, you have stepped on so many people's toes. So you keep asking yourself, if I let go of power, will these people whose toes I've stepped on forgive me? Then there are people around you who are beneficiaries of your power. And they also form in the, my matrix of power, and they form part of the radical segment of those with power and want to keep it. Sometimes I want to imagine that the fellows who say, but Muse, you're leaving us. How are you leaving us? Then he comes up himself and says, you know what, I can't hand over power to
wolves.
So you realize this guy is stuck with power. If he wanted, perhaps, if somebody helped him and actually pushed him away, it would help the transition to take place. But we don't want it to happen like that. And my own conversation, I think previously with you, Agatha, and my colleague, is that we need to prepare for a transition and be active participants in this transition. But assure the actors on both sides. Those who keep saying the current regime must go, but have no ability to actually make it go, make it worse by enabling the regime with power to act the way, how termites, if a termite is moving on your body and you try to get it off with force, it usually bites even deeper. That's what exactly is happening. So we need to have an environment that sees a future after Museveni, but also the people that are around him, so that a Uganda, which contains all of us, regardless of what has happened, we need to borrow a leaf from Kenya, from Moi. There had to be assurances when Kibaki came to power. There had to be assurances that they're not going to prosecute him for all the ills that he superintended during his presidency. The transition in South Africa, by the way, I've written something to that effect, and I've shared, I think, with Agather, and I can share with you. When Mandela was coming out of Robben Island, he says that what was on his mind at that time was that if he leaves that prison with the anger of the opponents, he will still be in prison, out of prison. So he shared himself. He said, you know what, we need to start over. And his presidential guard brigade that was put to guard him, he made sure that they all come from both the Africans and also the Boers. And for about a few weeks, the two were having issues trusting each other. So we need to build a certain kind of trust, that we have a future where all of us, the good, the bad, and the ugly, can belong to this big enough country called Uganda. Unless we have those assurances, we shall continue having rigged elections, we shall continue having violence, we shall continue having people stealing public money in order to secure their futures, we shall continue having drones picking people, in the broad daylight without even, remorse to think that they are actually committing a crime. We will have people being abducted even from court premises. All these things are not happening because Uganda is such a bad country. No, it's because of the absence of a clear future. The stakes of everyone who has a stake in this country. And I think we need to take leadership. In these transitions, in Kenya and in South Africa, the role of civil society was very key. They actually started planning transitions well long before Mandela was released, well long before Moi gave up power. The role of civil society and other stakeholders, the religious leaders, the private sector, civil society, the political parties, the traditional leaders. For me, I think now is the time to start this conversation. And when I saw the Mao, DP, and President Museveni agreement, I was actually a bit excited. And for me, it was on the background of that paper that I wrote. I said, Uganda does not need the next election. What they need is the next negotiation. If we had spent money in that conversation, I think we wouldn't be here. To the extent that President Museveni should be free and what would you call it? Comfortable that when if he leaves power, he'll be here.
Oh, Jeff knows my views on this.
I know Agatha's views. But you see, but also in terms of, views sometimes are changed by time. You might have one constant of a person and who has a particular personality. But the passage of time and the context there at that time, there's a way they change the way that person's actions would produce other results. I think President Museveni has looked at the next 20 years and he doesn't see himself in the picture. He has seen the next 20 years. He doesn't see himself in the picture. So, but how do we manage as a country now the next 10 and the next 20? We need to start that preparation now. So I think during the age limit removal, there was another bill by the Honorable Yomoki. He had brought a bill which would kind of help to sanitize the age limit removal. He says, okay, as we are removing age limit, let's bring back term limits. And I think by now, if we had done that,
and I will tell you why we didn't do
President
that.
Museveni now
I will tell you why we didn't do that.
His second term and going away.
Which is why when I listen to you, I say, well, wow, I hope I had the same level of optimism.
Right.
What else do you call it? that,
Yeah,
that
you need to
Jeff
have the
is always
hope.
Jeff is always thinking that President Museveni needs those assurances that there's going to be
He's
that's
going
the
to be
reason
here.
he's not leaving. Now, with the bill he's talking about, and I was told by a minister in his government then, who said, no, you see, in that whole fire that was happening when they were passing the age limit,
Right.
because the one who actually rose up when the Jomoki bill failed, during the debate of that bill of age limit,
Right.
Honorable Mafabi rose up and moved an amendment of, okay, it would have been a win-win.
Right.
Can we bring back
Term
limits? And the Deputy Attorney General then, Ruto, so these ministers, the one who is telling me, for them they are thinking, yeah, no problem, no problem. And Ruto gets up and vehemently, passionately fights against it. And these NRM people, the senior ones, go and say, but what is the problem anyway? Say, no, Mzee doesn't want any more impediments. He doesn't want to have another hurdle. And this guy is telling me and saying, you mean this man, once, this is 2017,
Right.
thinks that he will still be here after 10 years from 2021 and doesn't want, and this is the man you are saying that wouldn't be here. He's the one that blocked what you're saying wouldn't be here.
He can live as long as old as the Queen. However, he has an opportunity, and he needs to take it.
He doesn't want.
So
stop thinking.
So how do we make him want?
Stop thinking.
I think that's what Jeff is saying.
It's a good one. Yes.
Now Jeff thinks you will make him want by going and saying no one will touch you. No one. He doesn't care. For him, he wants to be president, remain president until. If he dies at the Queen's age, until 96. If he dies older, until that time.
So we still have a problem in our hands.
But that's why we're asking this question. And I'll come back to Michael.
Yeah.
So you were talking about a picture in Kenya that people are saying it's a $1 billion picture.
Right.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a clip, a moment we saw when the moment Uhuru Kenyatta gave Ruto that instrument, a guard, an aide moved from Uhuru's side. That in that moment, we should. I wish we could show that. Moved in that very moment from Uhuru's side to Ruto's side. In a second.
Right.
Here, there is no way. Let's say Dr. Messenger became president. There's no way Messenger is going to take the aid of Museveni because of that mistrust that is there.
Yeah.
There's no way. Because like Michael said, you have aides like those or bodyguards like those who are not working for the president of Uganda, but working for an individual, Museveni. The fusion of the state and the individuals and the party.
Yeah.
So my question is, you have a parliament which is saying we need something like that too. What role should parliament play so that when we are telling them here, we tell them that actually the power is in your hands to do this? What role should parliament play for us to see something like that happen in this country?
Yes. So towards there's the process of negotiation, but the process of public, not just participation, but involvement.
Right.
Now, I think the thing about transition shouldn't just be looked at as, oh, let Parliament handle it. Parliament can start the process. And then just like they did for the, was it age limit? Where they were given, is it 20 million shillings? To go and consult.
Yeah.
And consult.
And the constituents.
And the
told
constituents.
them we don't want.
We don't want.
Yeah.
And then and that to me is another picture of where representative democracy is a fallacy. This is how you're supposed to report. That of my 10,000 constituents, 50% said this and 50% said no. You can't just come and say they have said yes. So how about the other dissenting voices? Anyway, away from that, this process has to be people-centered, the entire Uganda, because you see, people have been proposing Truth Reconciliation Commission. We have hurt each other so much. There are different people who think that for them, they're different class of Ugandans. You can see them by the way they drive on the road island. There are cars which have been left that these ones, they can commit all traffic offenses. And then Ugandans have all that kind of of anger. So we need to heal as a nation. We need the parliament and other stakeholders involved. It will be good for parliament to move it, but it can't handle it on its own. We need the people to buy in. We need people to forgive each other.
But people have done that, Michael.
Which one?
The Citizens Compact about reform.
I was in that process. I can assure you. I was in that process. We did national consultations. We had the compact. And you see, the politicians just participated. I think they didn't own it. NRM itself did not.
Actually, the nexus.
The
nexus of that conversation needs to actually start with the political actors.
Yes.
We have moderates across the line, across the divide, both in the opposition and in the ruling party. If we had moderates coming together in one room and asking these very hard questions, for me that's the beginning of whether now it is good for us to actually have a transition, or we let things just roll over and then we deal with the consequences, which are usually more expensive to deal with. Loss of life, loss of property. And by the way, the role of the army. I loved the Kenyan. You can see, for them waiting to respect the new commander-in-chief.
Because they are the people's army.
Because they could have caused chaos.
Yeah.
What is the role of our army in Uganda?
And the man who you are saying is stuck with power is the reason for that here.
The role of the army. Is it possible that the army in Uganda can
do that?
Can learn from our neighbors? Yeah. Apart from playing games together.
I bet you had them say
what
they
else?
cannot salute
the
president,
yes.
for example.
But some of those are the radicals we're talking about, but there are also moderates in the army. Those who think a transition is good for this country. And good for all of us, but they're not us. But even actually our children and children's children.
For me, my problem with Jeff's views is sort of thinking we should depend on the goodwill of President Museveni. Go and beg him and tell him you are secure, is there a way we can have something compelling to say no? Because if the goodwill doesn't work, like it hasn't in the last 40 years, is there a way we can have something compelling and say, you have done enough, let us, before we have bloodshed again here, let leave and another person take over.
Those conditions must be able to pertain, but of course you have to also measure the cost to life and property. I think for me a conversation, I would rather give him an opportunity for him on record to say, you know what, we ask you honestly, like Semuju Nganda has asked him previously, and ask him again, especially now in the spirit of the new cooperation.
What makes you think that he hasn't answered Semuju Nganda, he will answer someone else?
Because if you read the cooperation agreement, there are some components about the transition, about national dialogue. Can we hold them to account for some of those commitments in this cooperation agreement, and to what extent they can implement them actually before the next election? I think we have something to hold them to, regardless of whether they mean what they say or not.
You see, the other thing I am worried about is that you see Jeff here, you see Agatha here, you see Michael here. At least we are able to speak and say, can we do this? Can we do that? So there are many Ugandans who are there who have resigned. They have withdrawn. Too much, empathy. You don't have money in your pocket. They are telling you, you must now pay milk for your children. And then we are asking, who is going to supply the milk? Then you have coffee issues and someone is saying, why not meat? So there's a lot of
200,000 if you lose your ID.
Yeah, there's just mistrust.
So many things.
And then you ask the minister, then the minister says,
I lost my old passport, which is useless right now.
Right.
It has no use even if I had it. When I went to get a new passport, they said, if you lost the old one, you pay 100,000. And that old, they are not going to use it for anything. Even the people that have them, that take them to immigration, they are not used for anything.
And they have your data. So
you're going to pay for an absentee passport first.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then, anyway, so there are many Ugandans. Just look at the Ugandans who are frustrated about the passport. Just look at the issues of displacement. Just look at the issues of the teachers. Every now and then
of
they are
the
striking.
drones.
Of the drones.
Picking
of the
torture,
on the whatever. if we are to have an honest dialogue, an honest transition, the transition cannot just be political.
Yeah.
It has to be social, economical,
Right.
cultural, conversing all this. And you see, let's have the religious leaders on board.
Right.
Let us have everyone on board, the cultural leaders, what they tell their people. And for me, if it is not people-driven, it will end up being just some guys in the suits negotiating our way, our transition, our power, and we don't know what deals they are doing. The famous handshake that happened in Kenya. Okay, people just
But
sit
at
there.
least in Kenya, the people have the power to
Yes.
reject it.
Yeah, the
As
people have
here, the
people-
handshake would seal our fate. The
Yes.
handshake is between
people going to
President
BBI.
Museveni and his son.
Yeah, and the courts happen. So I think that we can't shy away from these things. And the biggest problem in this country is for people to say that it is criminal for you to talk about transition. No. Those who love the country are the ones who are actually talking about transition.
Right.
They need to plan for it now. Because we are all mortal. No one is immortal, I can assure you. Tomorrow we'll wake up and we get news. What do we do? That's the scenario I paint. What do we do?
That better find us
That
prepared.
sometimes, yes, we better get prepared. That we need to think beyond President Museveni. We need to think of someone else. Someone else, if you gave me probably Uganda in the same, maybe I might be worse. I hope I will not. But with the current
You are not sure.
with the current system, where you appoint all the ministers, you have about 200 commissioners, that power, where everyone is writing a letter and benching.
Actually, a good question I would ask President Museveni is, how do you feel when you see transitions in the neighborhood? Does that really touch you to see that you have been here and you are now dealing with the 50th president of Uganda, of Kenya? You are...
Can you guess his answer?
Well, I'm just trying to imagine what answer. He has previously said it is not about the who but the what. Now, the what is the what for Uganda? A future
Because
that we want to
he
see
has
beyond
said
you.
before,
It's the people keep bringing him.
he has said he's the only person with a vision for this country. He has said on camera with people in the audience who clapped, and I was alarmed that he cannot leave this Uganda to... He even mentioned them.
Yeah.
Mentioned them.
To
Yeah.
the wolves. I think he mentioned some of them. And there were people in the audience. There was Jim who was in the audience. There was Vakana Rugunda in the audience. There was the current Minister for Information, Bariomunsi, and they clapped. And me, I was seated at home and I felt so angry.
That's an animal farm scenario.
Now, for you to sit here, Jeff, and tell me that this guy, if we cajoled him, he doesn't want.
What informs my thinking is, you see, if you don't try, you miss 100%.
But I think, Agatha, I think he's not really saying that let us talk to the man and then he leaves. What we are saying is that, for me, actually, what I'm worried of most is that if God decides to take the man tomorrow, what becomes of Uganda? There are so many scavengers. Everyone wants power.
Right.
What happens to Uganda if tomorrow what has happened to the Queen happens here? For me, I'm more scared about that. If everything is just surrounding one person.
Michael, we all are,
Yeah.
which is why we are saying,
Yeah.
how do we make sure it
Exactly.
doesn't happen?
So
I had
yeah.
Honorable Zinana here who was saying that there are all ingredients of instability in this country.
Right.
Like, so we all know we are sitting on a time bomb.
Yeah.
But what we are asking here is, how does it not
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
And what Jeff is saying is that it is by, that whole negotiation. He said the next negotiation.
Yeah.
And then I'm not saying negotiation is a bad thing. I am just saying Jeff thinks Museveni is willing to negotiate and cede the...
Maybe he is.
Yeah.
Let's give him a benefit of doubt. And ask the president for negotiation.
How many benefits of doubt do you have in your system?
It could be the last
You
one.
see the Elders Forum?
Yeah.
How many times have they tried to have that dialogue?
But I think, Agatha, that's the problem, just to cut you short, that we shouldn't always think about President Museveni. If President Museveni doesn't come to the presidential debate, there's no presidential debate. If President Museveni does not come to the national dialogue, there's no national dialogue. No, let us move beyond President Museveni.
The processes have to begin.
Like in that manner, for me, I will continue, just like we did with the National Fair and Fair elections. I personally delivered the invitation to the president's office, but he didn't come. But they were going, and then they said we didn't invite them. But for me, the point is like, can we go on? Can we move on without President Museveni? If he doesn't show up, there are many 48 million Ugandans. Let's listen to them. What are they saying? And then
but you want to present what they're saying to President Museveni.
No, that's again a problem. You're presenting it to the God.
You know what? You see,
to the God.
You know.
You see, we need to discuss our future. You see, let me tell you this. Let us start. Because not everything we are going to have President Museveni involved. Is that as Ugandans, what future do we need? Let's discuss it. What is East saying? What is North saying? What is Busoga? They are still struggling with the sugarcane. How can they be buying sugarcane? Sugar at the same price like the ones in Karamoja? Yet the sugarcane is from there. Every region has their issues. So let us start, and then amalgamate all the discussion.
I hear you, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
But also, just to add that in my previous statements, I've said, since we have understood that President Museveni is part of Uganda's problems, he needs also to be part of the solution. You cannot have a solution for Uganda without dealing with the problem.
But he is the problem, but he doesn't want to be the solution.
Actually, in my treatise, I don't say he is the problem. I say he's part of the problem Uganda has inherited.
So let us be dealing with the other problem
as well.
Because for me, I have a problem, colleagues, when everyone is always, let's wait for the president. What has the president said? Because then you glorify the thing, the problem more. Is that let us start our own conversations of the national transition we want. And then, probably this time around, he will feel like I need to be part of it. Because once we don't start, then it won't happen.
I think so.
Why should the Elders Forum say, now because the president can't come, we can't have a national dialogue? And then maybe the donors are saying, we won't give you money. Why can't we start our own? We do a youth national consultation, we do the women, we do regions, and then we say this is the Uganda we want as citizens.
And we ask all the institutions that are involved in this country to know that actually it's good for all of us if this conversation begins.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we will have a discussion on transition again in more details. But before we go, I had wanted us to look at the issue of the budget problems that this country is facing. So the parliament that passed a budget was now the leader of opposition through, I think, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi still tabled a statement on government's inability to fulfill their statutory obligations. The releases for Q1 were supposed to be 10.45 trillion.
Right.
But you have so many salaries that have not been paid. You have Bank of Uganda loans that far exceed what the Public Finance Management Act provides for. And the thing is that these things came up during the budget debate. There was an alternative statement from still the opposition to the budget saying that these things are unrealistic. For example, the collections you're projecting, the other issue was still on the loans that the debt that was far above what the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility provides for. And then we've had Mateya Kasaija, the Minister for Finance, saying government is broke. Jeff, you are the ones that deal with the budget and monies and releases the most. What do you say about the situation like this?
You see, in a situation like this where we have the context, we may have the laws, but it's usually the political decisions that take precedence. Because you can look at it from the legal perspective and say, according to the PFMA and the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility, you're not supposed to spend so much. But if the reality is that, and the minister has told us, government is broke, we are seeing it from what actually the signs or what it's able to dispense. Every quarter, there's supposed a 48.1 trillion budget. If you did that into 4 quarters, you would expect something like at least 10 point something trillion. Of course, never mind that some of the money you would need it if it is for capital expenditure. Well, the explanation which we are given is that now capital expenditure will come in the second quarter. But that impacts negatively on procurement. If you're going to give capital expenditure second, third quarter, you are likely not to have completion of projects in time. So that was an excuse, and we discovered, I think the money is not there. They would have actually given capital expenditure much earlier and retain recurrent expenditure, especially emphasizing on wages more than the other. But you also know that in our budget we have more of wage and non-wage, with capital expenditure, which is constituting, I think, about 30%. So that means if salaries are not being paid in time, which are a bigger component of our entire budget, and also non-wage, which is to support actually the salary earners to do their work, it tells you we're having a crisis. We're having a crisis. Yeah. So the explanation, and I think that was dishonest by the PS, who was saying, we're trying to control inflation. How do you control inflation, which is supply driven, by restricting further the money in circulation? You would actually be supporting more production, having people have more access to money, so that when production increases, somehow the prices are brought down because now people can, compete.
Yeah.
So, but it was a wrong explanation. Instead of saying, I like Asaija sometimes for his honesty. The guy tells you, know what, we don't have money.
We are broke.
So I think for me, we have to come down onto the drawing board, and that's why now government is running around and they are taxing everything. They have brought a lot of things into the tax bracket. There are, rentals now, they are moving around all these places. I saw a letter, actually, I forgot to take a picture of it. These like saloons and barber shops. They've all got
the new amendment.
They've all got a letter from.
You've been in jail.
They've got a letter from.
I hope you know.
Which one?
Hope you know that under the new Computer Misuse Amendment Act,
yes,
taking a picture will
no, but this is a picture which is already a letter which has been written by an authority, the Uganda Revenue Authority, requesting. They have now gone to that level of collecting money like market dues. What does that tell you? That there is a crisis in the country. So I think for me, the best way of dealing with the problem is being honest. Once we know we don't have enough money, we are all recovering from a bad COVID period, but we need to cut on useless expenditure. We need to cut on largesse. We need to cut on classified expenditure for recurrent spending. How do you have classified expenditure for recurrent financing? What is so classified about recurrent expenditure? That you are going to pay so and so, that you're going, and then you don't need the country to know about it? Really? What's going on? I think our priorities will define the kind of things we need to get our economy back on track.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Michael, we have an executive that does not respect its own laws. For example, the Public Finance Management Act. They kept amending it so many times to suit them, but still they have failed to, because that act requires that you borrow only a certain percentage. I think 10% of that year's releases from Bank of Uganda. And now apparently they have borrowed from there about 8 trillion, which it should have been much less than that. Then you also have an executive that doesn't respect Parliament, because one of the other things that Mwanga Chivumbi raises is a directive that was passed by Parliament, I think in September, about reversing a directive to bring local revenues to the consolidated fund. So because now districts collect revenues, instead of putting them to service delivery, sending them to the consolidated fund. And these revenues have not been remitted back to these local governments. What does that mean?
Actually, I'll start with the last one, and I think we've written about it, I and a colleague called Abaho, on saying we should, the local government should use the local revenue for the local development at the service delivery. And of course the argument has been they have no capacity, they will eat the money, but the thing is, I struggle to collect the money. Then I send it to you. So that you send me some. And then it doesn't come. And then it comes late. And then you say you must take it back. Then they say, is it low absorption or no absorption at all? I think this ping pong.
Because you send it back when the year is ending, and
I think this ping pong can't be. If, for example, I don't know if it has improved. About 3 or 4 years ago, the total revenue for local district was like about 6 million some years ago. Local district. So you want this district to get 6 million. First transmit it to you. Okay? Then you receive it and then see how to again probably release more to them. So I think that we need to equity demands that those with less you add more. Because you see, the argument has been that it will create unfair and imbalance if we let people, if Kampala uses its money, if whatever. No, you can still have control and quotas of the things you're going to do. Submit your budget. So I think that decentralization, yes, I think in my case, it is not serving the purpose for service delivery. It is more about political entrenchment. That, and also because we have a lot of money to waste in public administration. You have a cow, you have another DC assistant cow, you have all these people, and you have, it's too huge, humongous. So you have to pay all these guys' salaries. You have to pay all their allowances. You have to pay all these things. So now money goes into a lot into public administration and all that, these other things, and less of, look at parish model. You release money, you have no plan. Now they are busy arresting people. They have eaten money. You've not trained these guys on how to use the money. And then the people are using more money to go and sensitize people about parish model than the actual money they're going to receive. I think we joke a lot.
I know.
And we should stop bastardizing Ugandans and think we are foolish. You come with the Operation Wealth Creation. You give me cassava stems in December to plant when it's the dry season.
When the rain has...
Then after that, you wow away. Then you say, now I'm bringing you a mioga. Mioga comes, as we are still there, you're like, are we guinea pigs? Like, are Ugandans guinea pigs that just try every experiment? Or is there someone standing and saying, experiment this on Uganda? Experiment this. Same thing for Sage. It started at the pilot. Now they are rolling it out. They've, I think, about 100,000 people. But at what end are we going to live like we are pilots, pilots? Because what we need to do, we give government two things. Taxes, which are, by the way, they are very hard now, and then the mandate. What we expect is effective service delivery. Now, once there is no effective service delivery, you'll see what is happening. Now, you can't go to a hospital unless you have money. But government should be doing that. And we've been arguing that let government reclaim at least health and education. So that the money that Buyukwe sends, it can go to schools. But the school fees is hiked. The minister is not doing anything. They're not releasing the statutory instruments. Out of the blue, they are saying, now you must buy milk. Now you must do this. Can we?
They think they love our children.
Yes, yes, they think that everyone should take milk, yet it's meant for calves. Anyway, so I think that for me is that we need to be a serious country. Because today, people will say we are so negative. But let me tell you, what can I talk of? What can I talk of? What don't I buy in this country? I buy everything. Some man was beaten and killed here in Namgongo, and it is all over, An old man is killed in Namgongo because people thought he had money. So once you have a high level of inequality, you're going to have a high level of insecurity. So people are there deploying police thinking it is the problem. I know a friend of mine is calling back for Operation Wembley. But that's not the problem. These people are hungry. They lost jobs during COVID. And now you are saying, you who is a saloonist, I want a tax from you. Kira municipality is saying, I want trading license. Until when? So we need to be a serious country and say, by the way, where is the problem? How do we help our people? Because we are going also to run into food crisis. How are we going to solve that issue? We are going to run into all these things. How do we solve this issue? Because now I think that I don't know whether, and I like the honesty to say government is broke. So what? What do we do? If government is broke, what do we do? So I think that they need to be at the helm of things. And for example, for me, there is no reason to say, okay, we have stopped this project, we have stopped this, let us focus money on this. Because I think it is important to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have to discuss. I thought we could discuss more, but let me get your parting shots from both of you, and we close the session. Starting with you, Jeff.
Yeah, I think as a country, there are a number of things that happen as if we are in autopilot. I think we need to get back into control. I remember using the combination of 3 letters, the 3 Ps, the people, the processes, and the product. Once you get the people wrong, they're the ones in charge of the processes, and therefore that means they will control the quality of the product. So Uganda has people who are in leadership. The decisions they make using the processes that they go through determines the kind of products we get as a country. So once we get our acts together, I think there's a lot. And also thinking that whatever we do, by the way, is for all of us. I remember, as I conclude, one of my former bosses in an international organization I used to work used to say, we're either in this together or we're in shit together. The same set of letters which give you this are the ones also which give you shit. So we're either in this together by owning it, this country called Uganda, or we've been shit together. And sometimes it is worse for others than the others.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Right.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I'm always looking for some sources of happiness and
Positivity.
yeah, positivity. I like thinking positive, but also, you see, you can't expect to be fetching water in a basket and you're happy about it. You can't be always wanting to wash and then you are putting out the clothes to dry in a dirty courtyard. So I think that it is important that for people who are taking leadership in this country, take real leadership.
Right.
What do Ugandans want to see? Money in their pockets, food, health care. So if nothing is really like tangible and working for them, what do you want them to do? They are complaining about passports. People have paid for express. They are not getting it even in 3 months. What do you want them to do? So at the point, we shouldn't allow Ugandans to ask themselves, now what do you want me to do? They should be saying, I want, and we should stop saying government etuyambe. No. We should be saying government ekole.
Yeah, exactly.
Let the government do its job.
Yeah.
Because then why did we vote for you?
Yeah.
So I think that it is sad that everyone is fending for themselves. You have to struggle for a pothole to be filled. You have to struggle for school fees to be... Like, why is it living in Uganda is a struggle? Maybe at the end of it all, we shall all qualify to be warriors somewhere because it is a struggle every day. But I hope that, and I have hope that we can do better, and let us allow discussions. Let us allow dissenting voices, because that's what will make this country stronger. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
For me, as we close, I think that all our problems, and we've discussed many, and there are many we didn't even touch, can be resolved by a functioning parliament.
Right.
Start from, we're talking about the Computer Misuse Bill. They're the ones that have even passed it when it's not necessary, when all it seeks to do is to really kunyigiriza someone, a people that are already pushed on the wall. When you go to the issue of transition, like I have said, they participated in where we are now by amending the constitution so many times to suit one person. Now, maybe if they rectified that, maybe the peaceful transfer that the Deputy Speaker was talking about that happened in Kenya can happen here. When you look at the budget and the issues surrounding, still it's the same, that if we have a parliament that functions because of its power and mandate, would probably never have these issues. Of course, I'm not saying it's the only one responsible for our problems. I also think that the people should actually task it, demand that it works. Like Michael says, government etuyambe, no, it's our right, and it's their duty. They go to serve the nation. But also, we thank you for being with us. We'll discuss some of the things we haven't been able to discuss now some other time. From us here at Civic Space TV, we say nice weekend.